All right, this is the second video of Lesson 2, Factoring by Grouping. You were instructed to try to identify the common mistakes and then to fix them in A and B on the second page. So I'm going to go through those really quick. So for A, you notice that the polynomial is 3 terms, and once you factored out the greatest common factor of 5x squared y, the remaining factor is supposed to be 3 terms. This is only 2. So there is their mistake. When you multiply this back in, you don't get the polynomial above. You're missing this factor here. And that last term should be plus 1 because when you divide 5x squared y by itself, you get 1. So here in blue is the correct factorization of the original problem. Remember, if you have 3 terms here, once you pull out the GCF, you should have 3 terms as the second factor. In the second one, you should notice that the x squared minus 2 and the negative x squared plus 2 are not the same. So it's either 1, not factorable, or 2, you've made a mistake. And on all these problems, I'm going to make sure they're factorable, so you've made a mistake. So the problem was they didn't bring down the negative. That's the sign they were supposed to factor out, the negative 2. And that would have switched this sign and this sign. So here in red, I've rewritten the problem. I factored out the GCF for the first 2 in blue. I brought down the negative, and I'm factoring out a common factor of 2, negative 2, which switches this sign. Now you notice that x squared minus 2 and x squared minus 2 is a common factor. That comes out, and what's left over is y cubed minus 2. So there in red is the correct factorization. And later on you'll have to see if these are factorable, if they're one of the special cases binomials, but they're not. All right, so I'm going to do the ones that are checked, and then your job is to do the ones that are not checked prior to coming to class, and then you'll also be working on the problem set when you get to class. All right, I'm going to roll through these pretty fast. Always remember to look for a greatest common factor first. Number 2, doesn't have a greatest common factor. Group the first 2 together. B squared is the GCF. I'm left with B plus 1. Group the second 2 together. Bring down the sign I see, which is negative. GCF is 2. I'm left with B plus 1. I want to have the same common factor. They have the same common factor of B plus 1. So I pull that out, and I'm left with B squared minus 2. So there is your answer factored for 2. Number 3, these have a common factor of 2B, actually just 2. Let me go back. Just a common factor of 2. So I'm going to pull out a 2 first. And if you don't pull it out now, you should notice that one of the factors will have a common factor, and you'll have to do it again later. Let me use the same brackets. Okay, so I pulled out the greatest common factor of 2. That needs to come down into the final answer later on. All right, group the first 2 together. They have a common factor of B cubed. I'm left with C plus B. Bring down the sign I see, which is a negative. These have a common factor of 5, which will switch, that negative will switch that sign to a positive. Notice the green and the black have a common factor of C plus B, so that's one of the factors. And then the remaining factor is B cubed minus 5. So I have the GCF of 2 times C plus B times B cubed minus 5. And I'd want to see if these binomials are special cases, and they're not. Okay, there's number 3. Moving on to the next page. Number 4. Take a look. No GCF for all of them. There are 4 terms. I'm going to factor by grouping. The first 2 have a common factor of 2x squared. I'm left with 2x minus 3. Bring down the sign I see, which is positive. The next 2 have a factor of 5, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. Notice the red and the blue have a common factor of 2x minus 3, so I pull that out, and I'm left with 2x squared plus 5. So there it is, factored form. It doesn't matter what order you put the factors in. You could put 2x squared plus 5 first and 2x minus 3, because remember, multiplication is commutative. The order that you multiply doesn't matter. Number 11. I'm looking to see if they have a common factor. They do not all have a common factor. They're 4 terms, so I'm going to factor by grouping. Group the first 2 together. Common factor of the first 2 is b squared. I'm left with 2b minus 5. Group the second 2 together. Bring down the sign I see, which is a positive. These have a common factor of 3, and I'm left with 2b minus 5. Notice the blue and the green have the same factor of 2b minus 5, so I can factor that out, and I'm left with b squared plus 3. So there it is in factored form. All right, so the next one is an area of a rectangle is given by this polynomial, and area is always in units squared. Find the dimensions. So basically, when you multiply the length and the width, you get this long polynomial, which is the area. So we are going to undo the multiplication by factoring, and that'll give us the dimensions. So since it's a 4-term polynomial, I'm going to factor it by grouping. So I've drawn a little rectangle here. I'm going to just factor this by grouping. I pull out the GCF of the first 2, which is y cubed, and I'm left with 3y minus 4. Pull out the GCF of the second 2, which is a 3. Remember to bring down that positive. 3y minus 4. Notice that they share a factor of 3y minus 4. So one of the dimensions, the length or the width, is 3y minus 4, and the other dimension is y squared plus 3. So if you were to multiply these back out, this length and width, you'd get that big polynomial. So those are the dimensions, 3y minus 4 by y squared plus 3. So then the second part says, find the dimension if y is 3. So I'm simply going to put 3 in for each y, and I'm going to get an actual length. 12 minus 4 is 5 meters. And then for the second one, y squared plus 3, I would get 9 plus 3, which is 12 meters. So the dimensions are 5 by 12 when y is 3. Y could be anything, and then you would just plug it in. All right, hope this helps, and we'll answer your questions next class. Be sure you can master factoring by grouping. Factoring is one of the most important skills you need to know.